Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Congressman Paul Ryan, Republican, Wisconsin. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Mark?
Very well. Well, not really, to be honest with you.
Well, I got to tell you, maybe this will pick you up. I did 25 listening sessions in the 1st District of Wisconsin last week. Dozens of people came up to me and said, you've got to read this new book, Liberty and Tyranny, by Mark Levin. The only problem, the complaint I got, is your publisher didn't print enough of them, and all these people can't get them.
Well, first of all, you're very kind, and we just went over the 1 million mark, so if people can't find them, I mean, they're out there.
I've ordered one. It's going to take a while, they tell me, though.
All right, I'll get you one.
Well, I got.
Are you allowed to take one?
Rules.
Oh, the rules don't allow it, do they? All right, well, whatever. We'll figure something out. Here's what I wanted to tell you. Well, I'll ask you, really. I mean, our government is so deeply in debt. Short-term debt, long-term deficits, the stimulus so-called plan, TARP, this budget. We have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, S-CHIP. I mean, we're talking tens of trillions of dollars. I don't care if you confiscate every piece of property that every American citizen has. You can't pay that. And now they're ramming through this health care plan. Can you tell us what's happening with that?
Sure. That just got announced a few hours ago. And I'm the ranking Republican on the Budget Committee, and obviously I wasn't invited to these meetings where they figured this out.
Well, let's stop right there. Have you been allowed to really have any substantive input in this?
Not at all. I'm on the conference committee, which I'm in Wisconsin talking to you right now. They're in Washington hammering out this deal, which they've announced 2 or 3 hours ago, where they're going to, quote-unquote, reconcile health care. Okay, what does that mean? What that means is there's a special rule in Congress for the Senate, because the House can pass anything with a majority vote and limit debate and amendments. There's one rule in Congress that allows you to prevent a filibuster, limit debate and amendments, and it's called reconciliation. It's a fast-track procedure reserved only for the budget. And the idea was to reserve this to control spending, to balance the budget, to get spending under control. Well, they're using this rule as a loophole to put their health care legislation through. And so this health care legislation, an effective nationalization of our health care system, where they want this government-run option, which inevitably becomes, according to most actuaries we consult with, a government-run monopoly. This will go through Congress now with no more than 35 hours of debate between the House and the Senate, and it will be unfilibusterable, meaning 50 plus 1 senator, Joe Biden could be a tiebreaker, all that is needed to pass it. So they've got the votes to pass it already with just the Democratic caucus. It can't be filibustered. It limits time. And Congress will debate no more than 35 hours between the House and the Senate on this bill, which deals with 17% of our economy, the healthcare sector.
Yeah, it's so stunning to me. It's so stunning to me that people really aren't at the doors of the Capitol by the tens of thousands. And part of the problem, Congressman, is I've been watching the mainstream media before I came on the show. There's no discussion of this whatsoever. None. Is it because they want it to go through? Is it because they're doofuses? Is it because, what is it?
You know, that's a good question. I had an amendment on the floor 2 days ago to prevent this from happening, to say you cannot use reconciliation to create a brand new entitlement program to grow government and have this thing go through. You know who agreed with me? Robert Byrd, who was the basic author of this process, a Democrat from West Virginia. So even some Democrats who are, interested in looking at the Constitution and having the advise and consent process and having the American people participate in the debate, were shying away from this, thinking it was just too much of a power grab. And we tried to basically highlight this 2 days ago, and the crickets were chirping. It's probably a function of the fact that they want it through. It's the first time since 1993 you've had such an ambitious idea on health care. And this one has a much better chance of passing because the votes are seemingly there. And number two, this is such an arcane process in Congress. The word reconciliation and filibuster are just very arcane process words that don't mean anything to anybody. No one really understands the process in Congress. What this basically means is they can ram this thing through with very little debate, very few amendments, and get it done with just a simple majority vote in both the House and the Senate. That's what it means, but it's a process argument that is just mostly lost on the media and on folks. And the point is, if we're going to have a takeover of 17% of our economy, of the entire healthcare system, if we're going to have a complete transformation of our healthcare system, You think we ought to spend a little more time thinking about it, talking about it, having amendments, having citizens and their elected representatives participate in this process, rather than the backroom deal that just got cut that I just heard about by a handful of people in the White House and our congressional leadership.
And that's really what's going on. A handful of people, I'll put it my way, you don't have to agree, are running the country. Because they don't care what you Republicans in the House think. They're getting together to blow off the Republicans in the Senate. So this, you guys, you Republicans don't really matter in any respect to these people, do you?
Well, that's what reconciliation says. You had Chuck Grassley, the Republican head of the Finance Committee, working with some of these Democrats to try and get a compromise plan. A compromise plan would have meant you don't do quote-unquote reconciliation, and you get at least 60 votes to pass a bill that reaches a bipartisan compromise. What this new thing they just did today says, we don't need a compromise. We don't need 60 votes in the Senate. We don't need to work with Republicans. We, on our own, can do this right now, and we're going to jam it through, and we're giving ourselves the vehicle to do just that, and that's what we call reconciliation. So they've already just now said, we're really not interested in having a sincere collaboration with the minority party, a real bipartisan compromise that's going to get, 2/3 of all of Congress voting for it. They basically said, we've got the power, we've got the votes, we won the election, we're doing it.
All right.
And, it is their right. They did win the election, and elections do have consequences, and, this is a consequence.
Well, Congressman Ryan, we appreciate all that you do. We know you have to run, and we hope to have you back soon. God bless you. We'll be right back.